The rain was falling so hard it sounded like the sky itself was breaking apart. I was sitting by the window, mending a torn quilt, when I heard a frantic knock at the door. 3 sharp bangs. Urgent. Desperate. When I opened it, there stood my daughter, Valerie. Her hair was plastered to her face, mascara running like dark rivers down her cheeks. In her arms, she clutched baby Andrea, and behind her, little Arthur and Emily shivered in the cold, their shoes soaked through. "Mom," she whispered, voice trembling. "Can I come in? Just for a few days." I didn't ask questions. I only stepped aside and pulled them all in, wrapping the children in an old towel and leading Valerie to the kitchen. Her hands shook as she poured herself a glass of water, spilling half of it on the counter. She wouldn't look me in the eye. Something inside me, that old mother's instinct, told me this wasn't a visit. This was a goodbye in disguise. The children were half asleep before I could make them warm milk. Valerie tucked Andrea in, kissed her forehead, and stood watching her for a long silent minute. Then she turned to me. "Mom, I need to fix some things. I'll be back soon." Her words trembled like glass ready to shatter. I wanted to stop her, to ask what she meant, to demand she stay, but I saw the storm in her eyes and knew my questions would only chase her farther away. When the door closed behind her, the sound echoed through the small house like thunder. I waited for her headlights to fade down the muddy road, and my chest ached with a fear I couldn't name. The next morning, the rain had stopped. The children woke hungry, calling for their mother. I searched the living room, hoping she'd returned in the night. That's when I saw it, a folded note on the kitchen table, smeared with tears. It read, "Mom, please take care of them. I'll explain soon." But soon never came. That was the night my daughter left me with 3 small children, and the night I became a mother all over again. The days after Valerie's disappearance passed like a fog that refused to lift. Every morning, I'd wake to the sound of baby Andrea crying and little Emily calling for her mother, and each time, my heart would crack a little more. But there was no time to fall apart. 3 small faces needed me to stay whole. I sold what little jewelry I had left to buy formula and shoes. The old sewing machine that once sat forgotten in the corner became my lifeline. I took every mending job I could, torn jeans, curtains, school uniforms, anything that brought in a few dollars. My fingers bled some nights, but I would smile through the pain. When Arthur asked, "Grandma, are we poor?" I'd laugh softly and say, "We're rich in love, baby. That's what matters most." The neighbors whispered behind my back. Some pitied me, others judged. They said Valerie had run away, because of me, that I was too strict, too proud. I learned to let their words float past like dust in sunlight. They didn't know the truth, and explaining it wouldn't feed the children. Our little house smelled of thread, boiled rice, and baby powder. The walls echoed with laughter again, the laughter of 3 children who learned that love didn't need perfection, just presence. I'd hum old lullabies as I stitched clothes late into the night, the rhythm of the needle matching the heartbeat of the home I was rebuilding. One winter evening, as the kids slept in a tangle of blankets, I sat by the stove counting my coins. My hands were swollen from work, my back aching. I thought of Valerie, where she was, whether she ate, whether she missed them. A tear slipped down my cheek, landing on a half-sewn dress. I wiped it away quickly. I couldn't afford to be weak, not now. The next morning, the mailman stopped by. He handed me an envelope stamped with the county seal, Department of Child and Family Services. My breath caught. I tore it open with trembling hands. Inside was a letter asking, "Who is the legal guardian of Arthur, Emily, and Andrea Vance?" The words blurred as fear tightened in my chest. I realized then, love wasn't going to be enough. The world would soon demand proof. The letter from social services haunted me for days. I kept it folded inside my apron pocket, rereading the same words again and again. Who is the legal guardian of the children? Each time, my stomach twisted tighter. I had no answer. All I had was love, and love, I was learning, didn't count on paper. One rainy afternoon, while cleaning the old wardrobe in the spare room, I found Valerie's faded handbag tucked behind a pile of blankets. My hands froze. I hadn't seen it since the night she left. For a moment, I just stared at it, afraid of what ghosts might be hiding inside. When I finally opened it, the faint scent of her perfume escaped, a mix of jasmine and something sad. Inside were scattered receipts, a broken lipstick, and a folded piece of paper sealed with tape. My fingers trembled as I peeled it open. It was a letter, written in Valerie's handwriting. The ink had smudged in places, but the words were still clear. I, Valerie Vance, give my mother, Eleanor Vance, full responsibility and guardianship of my children, Arthur, Emily, and Andrea, until further notice. I am not in a position to care for them. At the bottom was her shaky signature, and beside it, another name, Lucy Hart, her friend from school. The witness. My breath hitched. My knees gave out, and I sat on the edge of the bed clutching the letter like it was gold. It wasn't just a note, it was protection, proof that I hadn't taken anything that wasn't already left in my arms. That night, after putting the children to sleep, I took out a yellow envelope from my sewing box. It was the kind that once held old bills and receipts. I slid the letter inside, smoothing the edges carefully. My hands shook as I wrote on the front in neat capital letters. For the court, if ever needed. I hid the envelope beneath the loose floorboard under my dresser, the same place where I kept our emergency cash. Then I sat back, whispering into the quiet house. You left me your children, Valerie. And now, even your signature says it's true. Outside, thunder rolled softly across the sky, like a warning, or perhaps a promise that the truth always finds its way home. Time has a way of softening pain, not erasing it, just wrapping it in layers of memory. 13 years passed like that. Quietly, steadily, like a long breath I never quite exhaled. When Valerie left, Arthur was a boy who still slept clutching a toy truck. Now he's taller than me, with steady hands and eyes that look like hers, but calmer, kinder. Emily, once shy and timid, grew into the caretaker of the house, always making sure everyone ate before she did. And little Andrea, my baby grandchild who couldn't even walk that night, now hums while cooking breakfast, her voice soft and sweet as sunlight. We built a world out of small things: school lunches, shared prayers, late-night stories. The children learned early that life doesn't give much, but love can stretch to fill the emptiest spaces. I taught them the old ways: how to patch clothes, plant tomatoes, say thank you even when the world seems unfair. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before dawn, I'd stand by the window and think of Valerie. I used to wonder where she was. Whether she was safe. Whether she ever thought of the 3 hearts she left behind. But as the years went on, her absence became a shadow that stopped hurting, something you learn to live beside. The town changed too. Neighbors stopped whispering. People started calling me Mrs. Vance again, not that poor old woman with abandoned kids. The children excelled at school. Their teachers praised their manners, their strength. I'd smile proudly, hiding the ache of what they didn't know, that their mother's name had become a ghost in our house. Then, one Sunday morning, something happened. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my tea, scrolling through old photos on my worn-out phone. A notification blinked at the top of the screen. A friend request. When I saw the name, the world seemed to tilt slightly. Valerie Vance. For 13 years, not a single call, not a letter, not even a rumor. And now, a quiet click on a screen, as if no time had passed at all. My hands went cold around the cup. I didn't know whether to accept or delete it. But deep down, I knew. Silence never lasts forever. The friend request sat unanswered for days. Every time I opened my phone, her name stared back at me. Valerie Vance. My daughter. My silence. My wound. I told myself I didn't need to know why she'd returned. The children were grown now, kind and steady. Our little world had finally found peace. But late one night, as the wind whispered through the trees, curiosity outweighed caution. I clicked accept. The message came just minutes later. Mom, I'd like to talk. I think I'm ready to reconnect. My heart fluttered, part fear, part hope. For 13 years, I dreamed of hearing her voice again. Maybe she was sorry. Maybe she wanted to make things right. The next morning, my phone rang. That voice, I recognized it instantly, though it sounded harder now, edged with years and something colder. "Hi, Mom," she said flatly. "How are the kids?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. They're wonderful, Valerie. They've grown up so strong." She sighed. "I'm glad. Listen, I'd like to see them. Maybe we could meet this weekend." My heart swelled with cautious joy. "Of course," I said softly. "Come home, sweetheart. The door's still open." She paused. "Not there. Let's meet at a cafe downtown. It'll be easier." When the day came, I wore my best dress, the one I saved for church and graduations. I even brought a photo album, thinking maybe we'd laugh, maybe she'd hug me again. But when I arrived, I saw her standing outside the cafe, dressed sharply, arms crossed, and beside her stood a tall man in a gray suit holding a briefcase. "Mom," she said without smiling, "this is Mr. Harris, my attorney." The air left my lungs. I blinked, confused. "Attorney? For what?" He handed me a document, his tone professional, detached. "Ms. Vance is filing a legal claim for custody of her 3 children. She believes you unlawfully withheld them." The world blurred. The sounds of traffic faded. My knees trembled as I whispered, "Kidnapping? You think I kidnapped my own grandchildren?" Valerie looked away. "I didn't want it to come to this, Mom. But you left me no choice." The cafe windows reflected my face, pale, shaking, older than I remembered. 13 years of silence had ended not with an apology, but an accusation. The courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and fear. I sat on the hard bench, clutching my purse like it could steady my heart. My hands trembled, but my back stayed straight. 13 years of love had brought me here. Not crime, not deceit, just love. Across the room sat Valerie, my daughter. Her hair was perfectly styled, her blouse crisp, her eyes cold. I searched her face for the little girl I once tucked into bed, but all I found was distance, and a bitterness I couldn't recognize. When the judge entered, the sound of the gavel cracked through the silence like thunder. "Case of Valerie Vance versus Eleanor Vance," the clerk announced. "Custody and alleged unlawful retention of minors." "Your Honor," Valerie's lawyer began, standing tall and confident, "my client's children were taken from her 13 years ago. She was misled into believing they were safe temporarily under the care of her mother. Instead, they were kept from her, deliberately without consent." The words stabbed through me. I wanted to speak, but the judge raised a hand. "You'll have your turn, Mrs. Vance." Valerie took the stand. Her voice was smooth, rehearsed. I was suffering from depression back then. I made mistakes, but I never gave up my children. My mother didn't answer my letters. She hid them from me. I wanted to shout. There were no letters. But I bit my tongue. Years had taught me patience, and truth didn't need to shout to be heard. Then came my turn. I stood, steadying myself on the wooden rail. "Your Honor," I began, "I did not steal my daughter's children. I raised them. I fed them, clothed them, prayed for them. I waited for her, 13 long years, but she never came back." Gasps rippled through the courtroom as Arthur, now 17, rose from the audience. "Your Honor," he said, voice breaking, "Grandma is our mother. She's the one who stayed. She never lied to us." Emily and Andrea followed, tears in their eyes. "We love her," Emily said. "We choose her." Even the judge seemed moved. He leaned forward, his expression softening. "This court recognizes the courage it takes to raise 3 children alone. But evidence will decide this case, not emotion." My heart pounded as he spoke the words that would decide our fate. "Mrs. Vance," he said, "do you have any proof that your daughter willingly left those children in your care?" And that was when I knew it was time to open the yellow envelope. My heart hammered so loudly I was sure the whole courtroom could hear it. For 13 years, I had prayed this day would never come. But it had, and now, the truth I'd hidden under my floorboards would have to speak for me. With trembling fingers, I reached into my purse and drew out the yellow envelope. Its corners were soft and worn, the ink on its front slightly faded. "For the court, if ever needed." I stood, my knees weak but my voice clear. "Your Honor," I said, "I do have proof." The judge gestured gently. "Proceed, Mrs. Vance." Slowly, I walked toward the bench. The courtroom was silent except for the soft shuffle of my shoes. Even Valerie's lawyer lowered his pen. I handed the envelope to the bailiff, who delivered it to the judge. He opened it carefully. Out slid a small stack of papers, a letter, a witness statement, and a folded medical record. My breath caught as the judge began to read aloud. "I, Valerie Vance, give my mother, Eleanor Vance, full responsibility and guardianship of my children, Arthur, Emily, and Andrea, until further notice. I am not in a position to care for them." He paused, eyes narrowing. "This document bears your signature, Ms. Vance. It's dated October 15th, 2011, and witnessed by a Ms. Lucy Hart. Do you dispute this?" The color drained from Valerie's face. She shook her head slightly, then whispered, That was just temporary. I didn't mean." But the judge interrupted softly. "It appears to have been signed voluntarily, and there's a witness statement attached." He lifted another paper. "Ms. Hart testifies that you were fully aware of what you were signing." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I watched my daughter's composure crumble. Her lawyer placed a hand on her arm, but she pulled away, her eyes filling with tears. "I was scared," she cried. "I didn't know what else to do. I thought she'd understand." I swallowed hard. "I did understand," I said quietly. "That's why I never went after you. I waited. I hoped. But you never came back." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was Valerie's quiet sobbing. The judge finally leaned forward. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his tone softened now, "this evidence speaks clearly. The court will review it fully, but it appears the truth has been waiting here for quite some time." And as I sat down, the weight I'd carried for 13 years lifted, just a little. The yellow envelope had finally done its job. The courtroom lights dimmed behind me as I stepped outside, the crisp air filling my lungs like a new beginning, and yet, my heart still ached. The yellow envelope had cleared my name, but it hadn't mended the hollow space between a mother and her daughter. The judge's gavel had silenced the accusations, but it couldn't silence the questions. Why did she really leave? Why didn't she come back? A week after the trial, a soft knock echoed at my front door. When I opened it, Lucy Hart stood there, Valerie's old friend, the same woman who had witnessed that letter 13 years ago. Her face looked older now, lined with quiet regret. "Mrs. Vance," she began, "I thought you should know the whole story." We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I had once fed 3 hungry children and folded countless bills I could barely pay. Lucy's hands twisted nervously in her lap as she spoke. "When Valerie left, she wasn't running from you," she said. "She was running from him. Her husband. He was drinking, controlling, cruel. He told her she was a failure, that she didn't deserve to be a mother. She believed him." I felt the room tilt slightly. All those years, I'd thought my daughter had chosen to abandon her children. I never imagined she'd been escaping a prison of her own. Lucy went on, tears glistening. After he left her, she tried to start over. But she couldn't find steady work. She wanted to come home so many times, but she was too ashamed. She thought you'd never forgive her. My throat tightened. I could see it now, the fear in Valerie's eyes that stormy night, the shaking hands, the hurried goodbye. She hadn't been heartless. She had been broken. When Lucy left, I sat by the window, watching dusk settle over the garden. The tomato plants the children had planted were heavy with fruit, their stems bending but unbroken. I whispered into the fading light, "You were always welcome, Valerie. Always." For the first time in years, I let myself cry. Not from anger or betrayal, but from the aching truth that sometimes love fails not because it wants to, but because it's too hurt to find its way home. The day after Lucy's visit, I found myself standing at the old park near the courthouse, the same place where Valerie used to play as a child. The trees were bare now, their branches reaching like open hands toward the sky. I waited on a worn bench, unsure if she would come. But she did. Valerie walked slowly down the path, her steps hesitant, eyes swollen from tears that looked years overdue. She wasn't the proud, cold woman from the courtroom anymore. She looked smaller somehow, softer, fragile, human again. She stopped a few feet away, clutching her purse like it was the only thing holding her together. "Mom," she said quietly. "I didn't know if you'd want to see me." I took a deep breath. "You're my daughter, Valerie. I've wanted to see you every single day for 13 years. Her lip trembled. "I thought you hated me. After everything. After court." "Hate," I whispered. "No, sweetheart. I was angry, yes. Hurt. But hate dies faster than love ever will." We sat on the bench in silence. The sound of children playing somewhere in the distance cut through the stillness. Valerie's eyes followed the laughter. "They've grown so much," she said. "Arthur looks just like Dad did when he was young." I nodded. "They still love you, you know. But love has to be earned now. If you truly want to rebuild, not destroy, I'll help you. But it has to come from the heart, not from guilt, not from fear." She looked at me then, and for the first time in years, I saw my little girl again, lost but wanting to be found. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered, "You were more of a mother to them than I ever was." I reached out, covering her cold hands with mine. "Then start now," I said gently. "Be the mother they still deserve to know." We sat there until the sun dipped low, its light washing everything in gold, as if the world itself was offering forgiveness. For the first time since that stormy night 13 years ago, I felt peace. Not the kind that forgets, but the kind that forgives, quietly, completely, and without condition. A year can change everything. Or, perhaps, it can finally make sense of everything that came before. The garden behind my little house was in full bloom again. The air smelled of rosemary and ripe tomatoes, the same patch of earth that once fed 3 hungry children. But this year, it felt different. Lighter. Fuller. Healed. The children, no, young adults now, were all home that afternoon. Arthur, with his suit jacket slung over one shoulder, talked proudly about starting law school. He said the trial made him realize he wanted to defend the innocent, not just in court, but in life. Emily was helping me set the table, humming softly while arranging flowers she'd grown herself. And Andrea, always the dreamer, was taking photos of everything, capturing the laughter that used to be so rare in our house. And then there was Valerie. She stood near the garden gate, sleeves rolled up, hands covered in soil. Every Saturday, she came here to help me plant, though I suspect she came to replant herself, too. The children still called her Mom, but the word carried a new, gentle patience now. She'd earned it, one visit, one apology, one act of quiet love at a time. She told me she'd started volunteering at a women's shelter, guiding mothers who'd lost their way, just as she once had. "If I can help one woman not make my mistakes," she said softly, "then maybe all of this meant something." As the sun began to set, the golden light washed over all of them. My family, my second chance. Laughter rose from the table, mingling with the rustle of leaves. Valerie leaned back in her chair, eyes shining, and whispered, "Thank you, Mom." I smiled. For what? For not giving up on me. I looked around, at the garden that had once been barren, at the faces that once cried in the dark. My voice trembled as I spoke, more to the wind than to anyone else. "Love isn't about blood," I said. "It's about who stays when everyone else leaves." That night, after they'd gone, I walked into the garden one last time and buried the yellow envelope beneath the roots of a blooming rose bush. Some truths, once proven, no longer need to be kept. They simply grow, quietly, beautifully, into forgiveness.